Soap. I'm sure everybody out there today watching this probably uses soap on a daily basis, at least I hope so. But it turns out that there's many people around the world who do not have access to soap, and that's a bad thing. If you don't use soap for a few days, you'll start to understand why. You'll start to smell bad, perhaps, but also soap keeps you healthy. How soap works actually is it removes oil. It doesn't kill anything. And why is removing oil good? Oil is where bacteria lives, either on your skin, clothes, your hair, dishes, really anything. And bacteria is in that oil and it's breeding. Once it starts to breed and multiply, it causes disease. So really soap, from way back in the ancient times, its special property is that it mixes with both water and oil. Most elements only react with one or the other. So again, soap, you mix it with water, it takes oil off. So what do? I recycle soap. So every year it is estimated about 10 to 20 million bars of soap are discarded by the hospitality industry. I'm sure most of you out there have probably stayed in a hotel once or twice, I hope. Maybe you use a bar of soap, you wash yourself once or twice, and then soap is thrown away. So soap cycling was founded 5 years ago by students at the University of Hong Kong as a way to recycle that soap and put it to better use. There are other soap recycling organizations. It's quite a mature concept, really, in the U.S. and North America and Europe. We are the largest in Asia. We collect from about 80 hotels in Hong Kong, 30 hotels outside of Hong Kong, in Korea, Singapore, and Japan. It's a very simple concept. The soap comes in, we collect it, we process it with volunteers, and then we ship it out to NGOs in the developing world, mostly the Philippines, but also Cambodia, Laos, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and a few other places. Right, so soap cycling, given its past, it has three main missions. One is youth empowerment through students. Students still actively manage our organization. Every semester, I recruit a group of 10 to 20 undergraduates from the University of Hong Kong who run the organization, and then I grade them. We always have a few criers every semester. And then the second pillar, of course, sustainability. So every year we collect about 16 tons of soap, along with about 5 tons of other things, usually shampoo and bottles, that is upcycled and distributed downstream, not in landfills. And the third one would be WASH. So this would be saving lives, improving lives by keeping people healthy, both outside of Hong Kong and in Hong Kong. We also distribute a lot to the refugee, homeless, and elderly poor populations here. But yeah, how does it work? The concept of soap recycling is very simple, right? I mean, basically you take the soap in, you gotta have contacts with the hotels. There's logistics, of course, involved. You need a place in some way to do the processing. You need some machines or some kind of process to do the actual cleaning of the soap and making it into new bars. Then you need partners to distribute the soap, unless you distribute yourself. Soap recycling can be a very small concept. We have student groups here in Hong Kong that run their own soap recycling initiatives where they collect soap from 1 or 2 hotels. They process it all themselves, and they distribute themselves through service trips. Or it can be very big. For instance, we have a rival or another organization based in the United States called Clean the World, who also operates here in Hong Kong. They turn over tens of millions of dollars every year through their operations. So yeah, if somebody's interested in recycling soap, you can reach out to us. We're happy to give you some information. How do we make money? Right, it goes back to maybe me and my role in the organization. I was actually a student as well. I was an MBA student at the University of Hong Kong. I started volunteering with soap cycling, thought it was a really cool concept. And I wrote the business plan for the expansions into Shenzhen and Singapore. So basically I worked with the undergrads, thought it was quite kind of fun. Taught them a thing or two, I hope, about what not to do. And then they asked me to stick around and manage the organization after I graduated, which I accepted, and which I've been doing now for almost 2 years. It's hard to believe, really. So what did I do? When I came in, there was no money coming in at all. Basically, it was just kind of it was just like a student project. I mean, they were operating, but in a small level. So what I did was I started contacting corporates. We did have some corporates who came and volunteered with us, kind of ad hoc. Goldman Sachs, PwC, Credit Suisse, and basically we just did it for free. The students wanted to do it, and we did it. So I started saying they should give us a donation in exchange, saying, hey, we need money to ship the soap, logistics costs, material costs, overhead costs. And they said yes. And so then I kind of worked with the students to develop a business plan of how to make revenue from these corporate events. And so today, soap cycling is pretty much revenue neutral just based on these events. Maybe 80%, 60 to 80% of our funding every year comes from corporate partners who want to do events. Why is this one of soap cycling's strengths? Lots of NGOs actually do this type of thing. Soap cycling is perhaps unique in that we can, it's a bulk commodity. Again, I've got 16 tons of soap every year, and I can bring it to your office. I can bring it to another space. I can do big events, 300 people, quite easily. The students are free labor, I guess. And then there's no language requirement. So a lot of volunteering in Hong Kong especially, you have to speak Cantonese if you're going to deal with kids, the elderly, etc. So that's kind of how I got the organization, hopefully, on a revenue neutral track. Some other things I did was I expanded into bottles more. So Hong Kong, I'm quite saturated. There's no other hotels I can really collect from. I can collect soap from overseas, but it's quite expensive and I need a sponsorship. So the only way I can expand here is to expand our products. So I started collecting bottles of shampoo. The soap is very wasteful, of course. They say 10 million bars of soap, that's an estimate, thrown away every year. The bottles is like on an order of maybe 20 times that thrown away every year. It's extremely wasteful. Liquid soap by itself is quite wasteful. Basically, it's just water mixed with the same soap that's in a bar soap. There's plastic involved. So we made an effort to try and start collecting plastic bottles from hotels, repurposing them, upcycling them, and then giving them out to people who need them. It all stays in Hong Kong. I can't ship the liquids overseas. It's not very sustainable shipping water and plastic to a third country. So again, it's mostly donated to the homeless, the elderly poor, and the refugee populations. But that's a new thing. So again, that offers new activities for the corporates to do. It's quite fun. It's quite interesting. And then it expands our local impact here in Hong Kong, raises our visibility that we think will help us to diversify our funding away from the corporate and maybe more toward government or foundations or individuals even, if you can show that you're having local impacts. Another program I've just started that I'm quite proud of, it's quite fun, is a work program for the elderly, minority youth, and disabled in our neighborhood. Hong Kong is a very extreme aging population. It's estimated 1 in 4 people in Hong Kong will be over 60 in the next 10 years. In our neighborhood, where our warehouse is located, it is one of the poorer neighborhoods in Hong Kong. There's a lot of poverty, and elderly people in general are much poorer than the regular population because of inflation, of course. And so we made an effort to reach out to some elderly centers to recruit a few workers. So we've got a group of 8 now. They're in their 70s. They're a good bit of fun. And it also is an effort to kind of raise our profile locally to show what kind of impact we're having. And also just to get labor. Actually, they're quite hardworking, and it makes our volunteer sessions more meaningful for the other volunteers, corporate and public. If there is kind of this, very local Cantonese-speaking presence that can also kind of guide the sessions and kind of facilitate. It also cuts back on my time as well, which is great. There are some risks, of course, but yeah, it's an interesting project that we're happy to do. A lot of soap recyclers in Europe especially focus purely on employment, especially for the disabled. It's quite a simple job. Right, international expansion. So we're talking about Hong Kong, what we've kind of built here. We're based on students, based on employment of certain groups, based on collecting plastic for recycling and liquids. So we've also expanded to Shenzhen during my tenureship. We've been operating for about 1.5 years now. We have an employee there full time. Another group of students from another university also kind of running things. China is a very different market, of course. We don't operate as an NGO. It's actually a for-profit entity. It just doesn't make any money. But it's hard to take donations. It's definitely a huge challenge. We work with corporates mostly, yet again. In Shenzhen, we have about 1,000 volunteers, 1,500 volunteers a year. The soap comes from all over China. Shenzhen, Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing. The logistics in China are extremely cheap, and that's one advantage that we have there. You can ship soap all over the country, pretty much, not for free, but almost for free. There's also lots of really close distribution opportunities. So one issue we have in Hong Kong is, yes, we've got the refugees, the elderly, the homeless to distribute to, but 90% of the soap goes to the Philippines, where a quarter of the population lives on less than $1 a day. So you're not there to see the actual distribution. We're just giving it to another NGO, and they're doing it. So it hurts our marketing capabilities because, again, we're so process focused. But in China, there's lots of places actually quite close by to Shenzhen where you can distribute soap: Guangxi, Guizhou, Yunnan, Fujian. So it gives us an opportunity from Hong Kong and from Shenzhen to get together, go take trips. We do cycling trips just kind of randomly, but we can do any type of trip to distribute the soap and meet with the beneficiaries. China is a different kind of market for the distribution as well. There are, a couple 100 million people estimated to live in not extreme poverty, but what we consider poverty, perhaps lack access to sanitation. However, it is not suffer from extreme poverty like the Philippines or maybe India or many places in Africa. However, the use of soap culturally is not it doesn't have much history. If you go to any Chinese restaurant in China, of course, they'll pour hot water on all the utensils in front of you. You go to a restroom, there probably won't be soap. So there's an education factor, I think, that's still, even though a developing country, maybe you could even say developed in a lot of terms, still a long ways to go both in sanitation, hygiene, and also for access to clean water. So a third expansion program that I started was in Singapore. It has not gone quite as planned. We've been operating there for a couple years now almost. It's also student run within US. We have a lot of great interns down there. There's zero supervision. The students run absolutely everything, which is like scary. They've done quite a good job. We have been unable to secure a charitable status down there through the government. It's actually quite controlling and restrictive. And perhaps we've mishandled it, let's be honest. But there's a lot of similarities to Hong Kong as far as the model goes. A lot of banks, a lot of the same partners we work with in Hong Kong are in Singapore. There's a lot of great markets for distribution, Indonesia, Cambodia, PNG. So it's building up. We're kind of seeing what's going to happen there. Of course, there's some challenges, but it's part of a lesson perhaps in any type of business. If you're trying to scale up and expand beyond borders, every market has its own little intricacies. It's important to have local partners who can help guide you through the process, which we didn't have in Singapore. You have to have local buy-in, people who can support you, which we do have, but it's, again, you think it's just going to be able to kind of cut and paste in a different place. It's quite similar, but it just didn't work that way. So that would be my advice. As far as my perspective, again, I was an MBA student. I'd worked in the law previous to coming to Hong Kong, and I decided to do my MBA to shift or maybe just see Asia for a bit. Didn't really think I would work in the charity full time. Didn't really think I had the skills for it, frankly. But I did work in the charitable sector in my free time back home. I started a charity, started a social enterprise. I sat on a couple boards, so I had that interest, and that's why I started volunteering for soap cycling, frankly. One thing I guess I would say about myself that lends itself to this work is that I'm not good at anything. I have found a hard time focusing on any one thing, but I can pretty much figure anything out. Basically, here in Hong Kong, I don't speak Cantonese. I don't speak Cantonese very well. I don't know really anything about fundraising or marketing or how to run a business, but I've been able to kind of build up a charity from what was basically on its deathbed to now looking to expansion, looking to really specialize in things. That's a good thing to be able to do, be a jack of all trades, even in a world where specialization is so important. However, it's also very frustrating in that you're pulled in like so many different directions that you have a hard time really doing anything well. Like fundraising, for example. In theory, I could spend all my time doing that. However, I just don't have the bandwidth. I work every day. I'm very embedded in the operations, dealing with the board, dealing with the other NGOs, dealing with the elderly, dealing with the students. It's just, you have to have be able to set boundaries so that you can get other work done, deeper work like grant writing and meeting people and building relationships. So my advice may be if you're someone who likes to do it, like to have their finger in a lot of different pies and not really focus and get bored on one thing, like you like variety, just be sure you can kind of set boundaries and be good at something so you can kind of pivot to something later. Leadership is another topic. Again, I don't feel like I'm a very good leader just in general. I have a hard time delegating. Again, I have a hard time, if I see something in front of me, I'm a manager. Like if I see something in front of me, I do it and I try to do it as well as I can, but it's not something like I have a hard time thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, which a leader has to do. And also inspiring people, leading just as like a concept is just quite tough actually. That being said, I built a board around soap cycling. It was just me and the founder for a long time. So now we have 4 other adults helping us, which is huge. But that's a different game. You have to manage that relationship. You have to find new people, cultivate them, kind of seduce them onto your board, because if you just go too strong, of course, they'll run away. So that's another game you have to learn how to play. Right, if you're interested, if you don't want to be bored, this is a good type of business for you, like running a charity, running a small startup. However, it's just incredibly tiring. It's just doing it maybe when you're younger. Again, I'm quite old. I feel like I don't have the energy for it. I wish I'd done it when I was in my 20s instead of working in the corporate sector for 10 years and then trying to switch. But no, it's quite fun. And again, like I said, I get to travel to Singapore, I get to travel to China, travel to the Philippines. You know, if you want to, Hong Kong's a good place if you want to be involved in a lot of different markets. Japan, I travel to Japan for work sometimes as well. So it's interesting. You get to meet a lot of different people. Like I said, I go from local college kids and kind of learning about them and kind of what they want, dealing with the elderly, from a different generation, and kind of figuring out their kind of mindset is really interesting. Working in, again, Shenzhen, going to China, meeting those kids, which they're totally different from the kids in Hong Kong, of course. The kids in Singapore, yeah, they're different game altogether as well. Dealing with different kind of governments, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Singapore. It's the relationship manager. There's one thing I think I do pretty well out of all these things. I would say it's just managing different relationships, keeping people informed, making sure everybody knows kind of what they're expected to do, and kind of, the game with entrepreneurship in any factory is just getting people to do things for you, whether you're paying them or you're asking for free. Because look, we get millions of emails, right? So the temptation is always just to ignore them. So just kind of getting that connection, making sure what you're doing is important, whether it's social or it's for profit, and just kind of talking someone into doing things for you. Yeah. Right. So it's estimated that by the World Health Organization that 30% of all childhood deaths are caused by diseases that can be prevented just by simple hand washing. Most of this would be chalked up to diarrheal diseases, but also tuberculosis and pneumonia are two big ones that inflict disease and also steal life away from mostly children, but also the very old in developing countries. So that's where soap is so important, in that it can not only save but improve lives. We talk about lives saved is a hard thing to really calculate as far as soap cycling is concerned. Let's say, for instance, we distributed 250,000 bars of soap, like 12,000 kg last year. How many lives does that save? It's kind of hard to say. However, it's not just lives saved, it's lives improved. Think about the child who doesn't get sick, perhaps. Maybe he would survive anyway, but he gets to go to school. His mother, perhaps, she uses soap, she doesn't get sick, she can work, she can afford to pay for the school, transport to take the child to school, a little extra food to keep the child from going hungry so he can study during his schooling. So again, we at Soap Cycling, we do not focus too much on the actual impact reporting. And again, that's one of our struggles, in that our marketing and everything, we're not there seeing the actual impacts. However, we take the big numbers. Like, for instance, since our founding, we've distributed about 2.5 million bars of soap. Each kg of soap, we estimate, is equal to about 25 bars. Now let's say you have one child uses 1 bar of soap per month. That means 1 kg of soap is enough for 2 kids for a year, right? So 24 bars, 25 bars. So let's say we distributed 12,000 bars of soap last year. That's enough soap for 24,000 kids for a year. And 24,000 kids, that's like a small city of kids, small town maybe of kids in Asia. But that's a lot, and we're quite proud of that. Last year we distributed 16,000 hygiene kits. A hygiene kit is just a bag with a couple full bottles of shampoo that we picked up from a hotel and a bar of soap. 16,000 of those kits to people in Hong Kong, mostly the homeless, but also refugees and elderly. So again, that represents about 2,000 kg of plastic and chemical waste that is being saved from Hong Kong's landfills. So again, we're not there to see the person showering. That would be creepy anyway. But we know how much waste we are removing from the ecosystem. And Hong Kong has a huge, especially plastic waste problem. I live on the beach. I see the waste all the time. So again, we're happy to at least, I think, make quite a big impact. By some measures, we're one of the larger volunteer organizations in Hong Kong. We have about 3,000 a year. And then by other measures, we're one of the larger recycling organizations as well in Hong Kong. So one part of our problem is, like, as a recycling organization, people in general won't spend money to support sustainability, like just even in the West. They won't even pay higher taxes in most places. So if you're a recycling organization, you have to make money, basically. Like, the government could give you some subsidies or whatever, most places they don't. So again, we're kind of stuck in that. We're recycling. It's hard to get money from the public or the government, really, in Hong Kong. On the flip side, though, we are like a charity, right? But we're not there to give out the soap in the end, which people, if you're going to raise money from people, especially, you have to have stories of the impact you're creating, personal stories. People are touched by emotion, storytelling. So we're not getting that. So we're kind of stuck in the middle, which is not a terrible thing, because again, you can kind of focus on different things, but again, that's a struggle as well, in that if you don't have like a strong, focused, unique selling position, then you can struggle because you're kind of stuck in the middle. Right. Numbers. What other numbers can I say? In China, we collect from 120 hotels, which is more than we do in Hong Kong. However, it's less soap overall. It's part of the hotel business. In Hong Kong, the average occupancy rate is about 90%. So if you had 50 hotels in Hong Kong, but 100 hotels in China, even though the hotels are the same size, you get the same amount of soap. The hotel business in China is completely different. The occupancy rate of 50 to 75% would be considered excellent in any condition, even during the holidays. The economics, again, in Hong Kong, the price of land is so expensive, they have to just churn people through those hotels. It has to be occupied all the time, or else they would lose money. Whereas in China, the hotel business is much more diverse. Usually the hotel is like part of like a big developer, like a big tycoon's kind of portfolio. It's not really there even to make money sometimes. It's just kind of like a showpiece that a developer or like a business consortium will use to kind of entertain people, maybe entertain the government. It's like if you're a big enough developer or business person, you have a hotel, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. It's just a way to diversify your portfolio. So that way, it's 70% occupied, it's 100% occupied, it's 10% occupied. It doesn't really matter that much. Also, land price is super cheap as well. So that's kind of the hotel business. In general, we don't get much support from hotels. For whatever reason, I don't know. They do give us the soap. They give us other things for free. However, there's not much. We try to engage with the general managers, housekeeping staff has been a big struggle for whatever reason. But I guess it would show you that the hotel business is quite cutthroat to people. It pitches itself as being kind of like all about hospitality and that connection and stuff, but actually it's a business. It's like they will undercut each other, on anything if they can. So that being said, they do give us the soap, and so we're quite grateful. Numbers. What other numbers can we talk about? We talked about disease, bars of soap. Soap recycling, again, it's a simple concept. You clean the soap, you make new bars. Anybody can do it. You can do it with, like I said, big machines. You can do it by hand. Chop the soap up, make it into new bars. It's quite a simple process, and I would encourage anybody out there who is keen to learn more about the challenges faced in the developing world by those who lack access to water and sanitation, hygiene, to join in. Also, if you're passionate about sustainability, I just talked to two girls, high school girls in Massachusetts a few weeks ago, who collect bottles from one hotel. They 3D printed like a little lid for a funnel, and they put the bottles on the lid, and it drains into a larger bottle, and they give that to homeless shelters. So again, it's a very simple concept. Anybody could really do it. Our goal as an organization, among many, is to make soap recycling as common a concept as recycling aluminum cans or bottles. So we want the idea of soap recycling to catch on, and we're happy to spread that knowledge to anybody who wants it. Right, plastic. We've started collecting plastic bottles from about 30 hotels in Hong Kong. It has been incredibly maddening, and that a lot of the bottles are not really recyclable in any condition. So basically, hotels are kind of just importing tons of unrecyclable trash into Hong Kong every year. Who's responsible for this? There are, of course, I know actually several of the soap manufacturers in Shenzhen who make the bottles. So maybe they're responsible. The hotels themselves, funny enough, all these hotels have like green credentials saying like, oh yeah, we're the most sustainable and stuff. But I mean, yeah, if you ask any of the GMs or whatever, they would say, yeah, no, we have no idea what bottles we use probably. Is the consumer. As consumers, we have to maybe make a choice as to which hotel we're staying at and make sure that we know, are they using bottles? What type of plastic are they using? I always advocate using the dispensers from the wall, and if I don't stay in hotels very often, but if I do, I try to make sure that they do not have individually wrapped soap. So we're hoping that awareness is probably as big a key of anything. The government could legislate saying that you can only import certain types of plastic. Yeah, the type of plastic, it's a maddeningly difficult. Soap is incredibly simple, right? Like most soap is pretty much the same. You mix it up together, make new bars. But plastic, I mean, you have to clean it, so it's like incredibly wasteful of the water if you drain the bottles. And then types of plastic have to be grouped together. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, unmarked, PET. It's like just maddeningly complex. And then the government too, like giving the plastic to the government to recycle, like it's not clear what they're doing with it, probably just throwing it away. Hong Kong is way behind most other places in collecting and sorting plastic. It's estimated like 5 million drink bottles get thrown away every day, which are completely recyclable, by the way. They do recycle drink bottles in Hong Kong, but people just toss them. So it's a huge crisis. As much as I am passionate about improving sanitation and hygiene for people in the developing world, also in Hong Kong, people who need soap, yeah, the plastic thing is a huge, huge issue that we're trying our best. I would say this, the plastic, the no waste people that I've met in Hong Kong, it's kind of a very tribal and can seem kind of elitist group. And I'm all for everybody kind of changing their lifestyle, you know, and making little changes using a paper straw or metal straw. Like, it's great. It also, I think, reflects the generational difference. Like the millennials coming of age now, like their activism is all about themselves, kind of like Instagram, like look how green I am and stuff. And that's great. And I'm glad that people are actually thinking about these things. However, the real change comes from like companies, right? The soap cycling is recycling tons of trash from the hospitality industry. Like, it doesn't matter how many straws you save from not using plastic straws. As consumers, if we're not forcing these companies to make changes, we're not forcing the government to legislate against single-use plastic. If we're not supporting organizations like Soap Cycling that try to collect and recycle all the plastic that's coming in, that's what truly makes a difference. I guess you have to start somewhere, and I guess I'm glad that the conversation is starting. But there needs to be more support for institutional change as opposed to just personal lifestyle change, I guess.